Hey folks, Steve here with another World in Flames video. We're going to be continuing the action of our Case of Yellow mini-series within the series of World in Flames War in Europe that we're playing. And I guess this is going to make part three. I don't know if I'll title another video Case Red when we're closer to Paris. I probably won't. We'll work our way through it. But we're making pretty good time as the Axis. That mostly is because of the great weather that we've had in the March and April turn. Kind of an uncommon occurrence. You tend to get plenty of rain, really, in this turn for those months. And it can kind of slow some things down. You end up not really wanting to do too much, or the attacks are a little tougher. But with the nice weather, I mean, we're already getting into France, and we're applying a lot of pressure here, which is great, really great stuff. So, yeah, we're doing good. Now, as I'm looking at the map situation, right, and what we're really focused on is, this whole area up here is really where all the action's occurring. I've got to look at the board and be thinking, okay, well, if I'm the Commonwealth player, am I getting nervous about the BEF? Do I need to get those guys, ready to pick the BEF up and take them home? And what's going to be funny about that is if they do, well, right now the transports are flipped, so they got to at least last until the end of the turn, and then what I would do is I would put the transports out to sea in the North Sea, and that's the sea zone that the Calais port, those coast channel ports, are actually in. They're considered part of the North Sea, and it's kind of an oddity to think about there, but it makes sense. So I'd have to put the transports out here and then try to get them across the water and save them, basically, and those transports would be at risk of, German attack, basically, either naval or otherwise, who might try to force the situation. I'm not sure they'd want to do that, but, it's going to depend on, I guess, how these next couple of impulses go. And as it relates to the Finnish-Soviet war up in the northeast off camera here, it's looking like we're probably, if the Soviets can't do anything more, and I don't think they can, they've lost steam. Their first combat went very poorly, and they can't really get things going again. It's very likely by the end of this turn, the Germans are going to enforce the peace deal, and we're going to get sort of a historical, and I guess not quite historical. It's going to be ahistorical. Basically, the Finns will have done better, and basically the Soviets don't get anything for their troubles, which puts the Soviets in a really rough situation. So certainly what the Axis wants, if they can make it so. But we rolled for weather last video, and the Axis once again have fine weather. We are at the question again, do the Italians join yet? And I don't think they want to yet. I don't think they want to yet. I don't think so. It's the funny thing, right? And I mentioned this last video. Sometimes you want to get the Italians in early, I guess, and that can help pressure the Commonwealth. You wait too long, the Commonwealth can solidify, like I've kind of done as the Commonwealth. But, I do have an intention for the Italians, which is preserve their Navy, use the Navy when the time is right. And I don't think we're really at that right time yet, really, honestly. So I might hold off still for the Italians yet, and we'll wait to see what happens. I really want to make sure that I can hit them hard enough that I can knock some of the British out of the Mediterranean, maybe, on a surprise impulse. That's my thinking. I'm not totally sure how I want to deal with that. But the timer is going to be on, by the way, with the French, because once we Vichy France, then we're going to collapse Vichy, start invading Spain. That means that all of this down here actually becomes Free France, which means the Commonwealth can actually put forces down there if they want. along with the Free French, whatever's there. And that even means that the U.S., when they enter the war, can land in Morocco and not have to do even a naval invasion, and that could change things up quite a bit. So we're definitely pursuing an ahistorical scenario here now with the whole pushing through Spain and not keeping Vichy in place, collapsing it, and doing everything else. Historically, it would have been Morocco and Algeria were Vichy, and then the Allies kind of knocked them, kind of liberated / collapsed Vichy in Algeria. It's a weird thing to illustrate here. One thing before we get into the action, I guess I want to look again at our European theater checklist timeline that we've had, and let's just kind of see where we're at. So we conquered Poland by October of 39, so that is a checked off. We didn't invade Denmark or Norway because of the Norwegian mining political stuff, and there's no reason to take Denmark, so Denmark is a happy, neutral little country, no big deal there. We have invaded the Low Countries that have been conquered, and we're working on France, so completing that in the May-July time frame, I think so far we're on track, but again, World in Flames tends to be later than history when it comes to the ending of France, or the fall of France, however you want to look at it. And then Italy joins the war in June 40, so I guess that, Italy really didn't bother to join until Vichy had been declared, and in some ways I could see why I would do that here. We want to make sure that this front is over with and the Italians can focus either going east into Yugoslavia or focusing on the North African front. And we may even decide, with this shutdown, if we don't go for Yugoslavia, maybe we transport these units up here down to Libya and we use them on an offensive through Tunisia and Algeria, and we still try to take North Africa. We could try that. I'm not sure how well it would go. Then we have the invasion of Greece towards the end of this year. I'm not sure how I feel about that yet. I'm going to have to go look and see the conditions upon which Greece can be aligned, and maybe we don't want to take, maybe we don't even want to start fighting in Greece. Maybe it's pointless and a distraction. That might be the case. But it does have an objective, so that's sort of something to think about. Also, at the end of the year, aligning Hungary and Romania. I'm not sure if how that's going to happen yet. We got to figure out when we're going to try that. Bulgaria, then, blah blah blah, the rest of the way through. But at this point, we will have been so far off history that some of this stuff just is less relevant because we're going to do sea line. At least that's the idea. For the Western Allies, we did mine the Norwegian coast, and that sort of bit us in the butt a little bit. We are contesting the Axis, and that's really all we can do right now, is hold back the Axis horde, support Greece as needed, and then fight in North Africa as best we can, depending on the circumstance. And then the USSR partitioned Poland. Yeah, did that. Invading and pressuring Finland. Well, we did it a little late, and it's still not helping us. We have not invaded the Baltic states yet, and that's something that I needed to do. I wanted to do. We can probably do that on time. What we were waiting for was U.S. entry chits to be there, and I think there's probably enough in there now that we can look at doing that. In Bessarabia, unfortunately, we're not in any position to invade or pressure Romania for Bessarabia. So this might be, this is going to be a bummer, the mistake of the Soviet Union to get too embroiled in Finland. And Persia's actually not in this scenario at all. You can't invade Persia, so there's nothing much there. And everything else, again, is going to be completely not relevant to history since we're going so far off the tracks here. So, okay, you can see we've kind of met a lot of the early war goals that we intended. But as we start to branch off into the ahistorical strategies, it'll be a little bit of a more unexpected, less predictable situation as the game evolves from there. Okay, so Italy's going to do a combine, and I'm just going to do all of Italy's stuff and get Italy out of the way. What they're going to do is they're going to rebase their bomber plane, and they're going to send it down, kind of the hexes, using its extended range to rebase down to North Africa. I believe I can anyway. It's all neutral or friendly territory, and they're not at war with anybody, so they can get. I think it's for extended range. You can do 6 times the printed value. I'm pretty sure. Now I'm like, oh, I better double check. Yeah, 6 times. Yeah, yep, I did that right. Okay, so it went all the way down here. It's still not quite at the front, but obviously the Commonwealth is like, oh, hey, why are you putting your bomber down there, Italy? Benito, what are you doing there, bud? And of course they're saying, don't worry about it. It's no big deal. And let's see if there's anything else that the Italians can do with their action. Probably not. The one thing I could do is I can move the subs here out and put them in like Cape St. Vincent maybe. These are pretty good. The only thing they have to watch out for is like technically the Commonwealth could declare war on Italy. It would just be a hurt on U.S. entry, and they probably don't want to do that. So just for fun, let's see, how many naval moves do we get? Well, we get just the one, which means we only move 1 sub at a time. Maybe we'll leave the subs there for now. It doesn't really matter. I don't want to send one out and then not be able to do another one. Well, okay. Sure, we'll send it out. So here's the thing. Subs can ignore Gibraltar when it comes to exiting the Med. They're the only, you can't do it with service vessels, but you can do it with subs. So for fun, we'll send 1, 2, and this will end up in the 3 box. A Italian, you can't see that because of the glare, but there you go. And the 3 box is an Italian sub. Again, why is the Italian player doing that? It's fine. It's fine, Western Allies. Don't worry about a thing. We're just testing out our new subs that we built. We're just setting stuff up. It's fine. We all know what's going to happen, right? And I think that's really it. The Italians are not quite ready to do major activity. What they'll probably end up doing is when they do declare war, they'll probably do a naval action. And what they'll do is they'll make sure that all of their stuff is out there and ready to go. And then they will move their fleet out and they will probably attack. Because the really important thing is, and the Commonwealth, is thinking through this now, and it's like, oh crap, is if I cut the convoy line here in the Med somewhere, it's going to put units in Egypt potentially out of supply, or some of them out of supply. They still got a back route out of there via the Egyptian convoys, but we could start to have, wreak havoc on that and the shipping and everything else. So something that Commonwealth is going to have to worry about. So just for fun, we're sending the subs out. There's almost no point to doing it right now, other than to dare the Commonwealth to declare war on the Italians, but they're not going to do that. So that leaves us just with Germany to worry about. And again, we could say, oh, let's do a combined, or let's do a naval and send our subs out. Let's go hunting for convoys. But right now, we really need to make the most use out of our fine weather as possible. We need to put everything into the land war and get France, in its coffin and nailed down as quickly as possible. So, no worrying about the subs. That will all come in time. The siege of Britain will come in time. For now, we've got enough in front of us. So, the Germans are going to do a land, obviously, and they will go through the whole motions. Now, they have some limited air power that is available, but it's not going to be, it's not a huge amount is the problem. So I don't know that we're going to do any ground striking. Probably not. We probably want to add ground support, but there's a couple places where it might make sense to try to do a ground strike. It would be probably here, and I'm just thinking through. If I did it, then it would just mean that we would have less we would have probably poorer odds than if we used the unit for ground support. So I guess I need to think through, do I want to use my last Stuka that's not flipped on a ground strike, and we'd probably do right there, or do we save it for ground support? I mean, the same thing is, it's going to be either, do you get, using the 1d10 combat table, do you want more factors to get better odds shifts on the column, or do you want to use it to flip them and get better die roll modifiers? And it's kind of hard to say either way. And 1d10 is very different than 2d10, because in the 2d10 system, everything ends up becoming a modifier in some way or some form. Where here, there is sort of a difference, and you need to kind of figure it out. But because ground strike happens before land movement, I don't necessarily know what units I'm going to have adjacent to that stack to attack. So that's going to be the real challenge. I need to figure out where I want to put my units to do the damage. So I'm gonna think through that, and when we come back, we'll have figured it out. Okay, so very quickly, I decided, I was trying to figure out what combat factors I would have in that potential combat. And I think what I figured out was that the tactical factors from the ground from the ground support wouldn't actually matter that much in terms of shifts. So we are going to go for the ground strike, and I've set up the allocated combat here. If I can get this on. So yeah. So just in case in point here, as we look at these guys, and it's a little blurry, I realize this camera's not the best camera in the world. Focus. Enhance. It doesn't want to focus. All right. Anyway, let's see if I zoom out a little bit, if that makes it better. There we go. Okay. So that French fighter was in range for interception. So interception is you use half your range, but half of 3 is 1.5 rounds up to 2 is 2 hexes away. So we're going to have this. Now, here's the thing. I could have put another French fighter in. I want to hold that French fighter back because the other French fighter actually has tactical bombing factors that we could use for ground support in another combat. I don't want to use it yet. Well, I guess I could. Yeah. I guess, yeah, I'm going to wait. Yeah, because we're doing ground strikes, not combat. Okay. So the other French fighters being held in reserve, it's going to do ground support later. The Germans maybe didn't think about that, but they want to do the ground strike. So, this is kind of how it's all working out, right? It's like you could hold it back for ground support. Maybe if I would have known, maybe the French player was going to use their good fighter bomber as a bomber, then I would have held back from this ground strike, but, whatever. I'm playing myself. I can't outguess myself, so I just have to kind of go with the flow here. So, yeah, let's take a look. We're going to do the air combat. Now, the French are at -2 column, which isn't so bad. They rolled an 8, which is a no result, so that's a bummer for them. And the Germans, they roll a 9, which is a no result. They're just shooting at the air. All right, French are going to go again. Everyone's going to stay. And wow, the French roll a 17, which is great for them, I think. DX. The defender destroys own front fighter or bomber. Well, I think we want. I think we want the bomber to get through here. Though it doesn't take very long to build that bomber back, and that having the fighter is going to be important. Man, French got lucky. I think I'm going to get rid of the fighter. That's 2 fighters lost now. And of course, the Germans will roll their result as well. And so they got a 10, which is a, let's see, +2. AC. Attacker clears through any one defending bomber. This is actually a bad result for the Germans because the French don't have a defending bomber. Oh man. So what? Oh man. So okay. So now it's, do the Germans abort, or do they try to get their way through? And the problem is going to be that the French are going to have a pretty profound, or well, yeah, they're going to have an advantage on this bomber. So do we force it or no? Ah man, live to fight another day, or do we try to get through and do the bombing? Um, what do we want to do here? I'm looking at the odds, and it's very likely that we're going to lose something. So I'm going to abort the bomber, and the Germans are incredulous that the French fighter managed to save the day. So there you go. The French Air Force has beaten the Germans amazingly, and maybe we should have put in another fighter, but yeah, that's a bummer. So the ground strike is a failure, and the Germans lost a fighter out of it. They decided to pull the Stukas back because it's just too valuable to lose both of those. But man, that hurt. That was not great for the Germans. I'll say the French have been rolling hot on air combat. They've just been rolling just very well. And the way that, again, the air combat tables work is that your standard deviation, the further out from the standard deviation on a bell curve is good results. So you only get like crappy results more often than good results, and the good results are always on the tail ends of the bell curve. It's kind of weird. It's a weird graph. It's different than a lot of combat tables. Okay, so ground strikes are done. I don't think we're going to do any rail movement. Well, maybe we will. I could see a case where we would want to do something. No, we won't worry about rail movement right now. I kind of want to do something with the Berlin militia, but I'm not worried about it yet. So we'll do land movement. So I'm going to take care of all the land movement, and then we'll see what happens. We know, as the Germans, that we're not going to get any bonuses from flipped units, so we've got to get the right combat factors in. We also know that the French have a fighter bomber with 3 tactical factors that they could throw in, but we have our own fighters that we could throw in. So we'll have to figure out the best combination to make a further advancement. We're not taking a lot of hexes in this impulse necessarily, but again, it's important. We're just, impulse by impulse, we're getting 1 hex closer to Paris each time. That's what's important. Okay, so here we are after the movement. You can see I've mostly just moved my guys forward into position, and I think it was sort of a tough thing, right? Do I try to attack up here against the BEF? And the reason why we don't is that the Commonwealth still has air support that they could call in, and we don't really have any. In fact, the only thing really left for our air at the moment are fighters, and even then, it's pretty tight as it is. So there's not a lot more we can do. We're actually amusingly getting to a point where we wouldn't mind if the weather turned badly in a few impulses, because we're only going to be able to get so much farther, and we're going to spend all of our HQs. We'll really be looking for a final reorganization. And if there's still time left in the turn, then we could start looking at doing some naval stuff at the very end. So it's kind of funny. You get these real long turns, but eventually you do start to run out of steam, and you really don't want the Allies to have a whole lot of time to react and to do their own thing, essentially. So we did movement, and now we're looking at land combat. And so here's the situation we have. We have 16 factors here with armor. We have 13 factors here with armor, and another 16 here with armor. So these guys don't have armor, I guess. So you can imagine 16 plus 16 is 32, plus another 13 is 45. So 45 attacking a hex with French units in it with 9 combat strength. So 9 to 45, or 45 to 9 rather, is 5-to-1 odds, which is pretty good. And we're going to do the blitz table, and we're going to have a +1 to the die roll. So really, this ought to go pretty well for the Axis, but the French still have an opportunity to do something, and what they're probably going to try to do is they're probably going to try to throw in this plane here for ground support. So I'm trying to think through. I think my problem is going to be that my planes are too far out for ground support or even interception. I wonder, can I send... I've never bothered to look this up before. Yeah, this is interesting. I'm sort of in a conundrum as to what I want to do, if what I'm even allowed to do. So can I send an escorting fighter 1, 2, 3, no matter what, without an actual ground support mission that I'm supporting? Is that possible? Do I have any other planes that I can use? It doesn't look like it. This is kind of a weird situation. I'm going to have to think through this. Basically, the only thing left to do in this impulse is to launch the attack, but the French are very likely going to send in their fighter bomber to do ground support. We don't want that. That's going to make it worse odds for us, so I need to figure out what's possible here. Some smart person thought of this before I ever did. Made sure the roll said the right thing, and indeed they do. So when you read the section on ground support, the attacking player actually can do combat air patrol. It's not a escorting 0 bombers, it's just combat air patrol. And I indeed can send my fighter, using its full 3 range, to the combat, and then the French player can then decide, do I want to send my bomber or not? And so let's play it out, right? So we're going to go ahead and have Cap with this fighter here. We'll just set him over here in the Bay of Biscay off to the left where you can't see for the moment. And I think I will have the French do their ground support. And we'll have to run through air combat. And this is going to be especially interesting because of the roles that the planes are playing. Now my other fighter is out of range, so this is it. And the Germans are really hoping that for once the French air are going to roll poorly. So, what are we looking at here? Well, the French have a bomber. It's really their fighter, but they can send it as a bomber, a fighter bomber. And it has a 3 tactical value. It's going to be opposed by the German fighter here. But you'll see, now we're not playing with any optional rules, so that orange 3 doesn't mean a whole lot for that French fighter, but it is a 3, and so when we do the air combat, basically, because there's only 1 enemy bomber and 1 fighter of ours as the Axis, as the active player, you're going to use the bomber's air-to-air rating for this. And so, just wanted to make sure I got the right rule here. I don't think there's any penalty for this being the case. Just make sure. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so it's the front bomber and front bomber only. So really, we have a 3 versus 3, which means the net differential is 0. So the Germans are sending this fighter up hoping to shoot down the bomber. If the bomber gets clear, then that's all we got. So we're going to roll the dice. We'll roll for the French first, as it is, and we'll see what we get. They got a 6, which might be okay. Attacker aborts. Okay, let me make sure I get this right. Yeah, 6, AA. The attacker aborts defenders, front fighter or bomber. Okay, so they're going to abort this fighter, is what's going to happen. Yeah. Attacker, the dice roller, aborts the defender's front fighter or bomber. So this means that the Germans aren't going to get a second attempt. This will all be all they get. So they're hoping to roll, and I think based on this, they need to roll very well. So they either need to roll a 4 or less, or let's see. I guess it could be a 5. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, we're just going to roll the dice to figure it out. All right. Ooh, not great. They rolled a 12, which is probably the worst that they could roll. AC, the attacker clears through anyone defending bomber, which does nothing for the Germans. So, Germans might have a problem here. So the fighter goes home, is aborted, and that's the end of this guy's activities. And then we have the French unit gets to add its combat factors to the combat that we're going to have. So now it's 12 combat factors. So 45 to 12, which is not as good. 45 to 12, so it's 3 to 1 odds, I guess. Yeah, 45 to 12. I guess that would have to be 3 to 1 odds. I'm not playing with fractional odds or any of that stuff. So we're not playing with any options. This is what the game can give us. We're going to have 3 to 1 odds. If we had 4 to 1 odds, we would need 48, but we only have 45, and we didn't have any ground support left over. So this is an example of where you can see that air combat can have, you can kind of plan it out in terms of your land combat. You can say, okay, I think we'll do this, and it'll work out. But it's that air that adds in that variable, and you just don't know for certain. It's not, you can't perfectly calculate every die roll for ground combat because you just don't know what air is going to come in and change it up. So that means it's not a 5 to 1 ratio, it's only a 3 to 1 ratio. But we still have the +1, I believe, due to the armor, and it's going to be on the Blitzkrieg table. So 3 to 1, +1. Yeah, there's definitely more armor attacking in a clear weather hex, so that's definitely +1. There's no face down units, and yeah, I think that's really it. Yeah, so it's 3 to 1 odds on the Blitz table. Let's see what we get. Alright, so we got a 7, so that is decent. That is 1 unit lost, and then the other must retreat for the French. So we'll go ahead and we'll see here. So the plane's done. We'll relocate the plane and we'll set it back there. We're going to lose the 4-3 unit, and this is going to be an extra build point for the French because they've lost a unit in their home territory. So that's just one thing we need to keep in mind for production. This is just a bonus build point roll. I don't believe it's optional. It's just part of the game. When you lose a unit of your nationality in the home country, you get a bonus build point. It's like the remnants of that unit. You didn't have like 30,000 guys just die. There's stuff that's remnants, and you just can you recoup the losses a little bit. And then we have to retreat, and we'll retreat 1 hex back here. Now we can advance after combat, and then we're going to have half the units not flip. And so what I'll just do, so we had 6 attacking units, 3 would have to flip, and we're just going to go ahead. I'm going to make it easy on myself so I'm not flipping a bunch of stuff. I'm going to flip this HQ, and I would be reorging all 3 of the units there that would have been flipped. Right, so I'm sort of skipping a step so I'm not playing around with counters. I would have had to flip 3 units. Instead, I'm just going to say I'm flipping that HQ to reorg them. So there we go. That was a clean take. Well crafted. Now I guess maybe I should rethink this advancement. Right, maybe I should do that instead. But I think this is decent enough combat factors. They'd be able to attack with 9 18. Yeah, they'd have a real hard time with that. So yeah, there we go. A clean take. We do have a rebase, so what we'll do is we'll rebase that fighter there, just so he's a little bit closer to the line. And we're gonna need a end of a turn at some point, but that is not possible in the given circumstances. So that's it for the Axis move. And just as an aside, I did do some land movement over in the east. That's just to make sure that Poland is fully garrisoned. Not really a big deal there. And I did previously rail a unit from Berlin to, let's see, what is it, Rotterdam, just so I have some guys there in Denmark helping to garrison it and hang out as needed, because it's a decently strong militia unit. So there you go. That's the Axis impulse, and it's going to slide one box over to the Allies, and the Allies are going to have to decide what they want to do. Things have gotten pretty gnarly, and even the BEF now is a little under threat here. We got 2 hexes on them with decent strength. We could do a whole lot more. And as a reminder, if we try to imagine where we're at in terms of progress, let's see if I can get this somehow on camera without destroying things. If we try to look to see where I'm at, we're just a few hexes away from Paris, and we're getting awfully close. And what's especially important is that in the hex that we just took, there's also a resource that we're taking from the French. So when we do get to production for this turn, something that we have to keep in mind is that things are changing. The borders are changing. The taken territory is changing. And the Germans are going to get an extra resource out of France. They may not even need it, honestly, but they'll get it, as well as the stuff they're getting from Belgium. Maybe it's more important that the French now have lost out on a resource, and they're going to have less they can build. Now, at this point, it may not matter a whole lot because France's days are numbers, but it might surprise you how important every build point is as France holds on. When we look at the hexes that are here, I mean, we're really we're just one hex away from being in our attack positions for Paris. So we're going to keep pushing our way through. We might end up reaching a point where we've got to shorten the line as the Axis even by taking Lille or knocking out the BEF. But we're in a pretty good position. We haven't lost anything. We've maintained our momentum, and that's really probably the most important piece of the puzzle here, is that we're able to do that. So there we go. Okay, let's kick it over to the Allies, and they need to decide what they're going to do. Okay, kicking it back to the Allies, I think at the moment the Russians kind of have to just, they're going to do their combined as a neutral, but they don't have a whole lot that they can do. They probably, let's see, they're going to hit U.S. entry is the real problem. That's what they've been worried about, and why they haven't done a whole lot more. They could wait another turn to take the Baltics. There's not really anything pushing on them to do it. So again, I think the Soviets are just they're going to pass. They're not going to pass. They want the turn to last longer for the Western Allies' benefit, but they're not going to do anything, which is too bad for them. For the Commonwealth, now their problem is they have things they'd like to be able to do, but they just don't have much opportunity to do it. What they may end up doing is, as I'm looking at the situation, yeah, I guess there's not much even the Commonwealth wants to do. Yeah, I don't know. It's sort of, it's a tough thing. It's like the Commonwealth can't do a whole lot. Maybe what we'll have them do is a combined. I think they get 3 land moves for that, and 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. I'm just going to move some of my units up ahead of Alexandria. Oh, wait, no, we don't want to do that. Never mind. Gosh, silly, Steve. That would be poor choice. We don't want Alexandria to be taken from behind by an Italian Marine. Never mind. Okay, so the Commonwealth, if there's something that the Commonwealth could be doing right now, let me know. I don't think they can really attack. See, that would be 16 minus 1. 13 to 16 minus 1. That's not going to work. The French... Well, I want to think about the Commonwealth before I think about the French. We want to move our convoys out to the Caribbean, but they have the CP used marker for the rest of the turn, and I don't have an HQ nearby to reorg them. I'd like to reorg the transports, but they're flipped, and I don't have an HQ there either, so it's really like the Western Allies can't do a whole lot. There's just not enough happening. Now, if there were German subs out, they could try to hunt down the subs or something, but they just don't have anything that they can really do. They're sort of locked into, fate, I guess, of dealing with France. So Commonwealth is going to take its action, and all it's really going to do is sit there, I guess. That's the best I can think of. Maybe I'm missing something, but there's not a whole lot that they can really do. I mean, that's just the reality. Our transports are kind of used up. Our convoy points, our extra convoy points to move them out are used up. And everything else has some level of coverage, and we don't need to worry about the Japanese raider fleets in the transfer pool yet. So really, yeah, there's not a whole lot we can do. Yeah, gosh, very challenging, very challenging. Yeah, I guess that's it. The Commonwealth won't do anything. And we will turn it over to the French, really. Now, the French are probably going to need to do a land move, and that's to try to get something fixed up here. So let's check our 9 combat factors, 8, 9, 9 with the river. 9, 9. So it's funny, the factors work out that the French have like 9 combat factors in every hex, which is funny. 5 and 8. So we're going to move that guy up. The French can't really afford to pull off the Italian border, because then the Germans are just going to sweep in. And then he'd be thinking about, well, why don't you just conquer France instead of beaching France? And that's why we don't want to vacate Italy totally. But I think all of our other spots are okay. We're kind of out of air. Our ground units are fine where they're at. It's just they've got to hold against the situation as it is. And it's a question of, do I start pulling back from the Maginot Line? I'm not sure I want to do that yet. What would we be giving up? A red factory? We could probably hold that red factory for another turn. So yeah, there is a red factory here that the Germans could use. If we started vacating the Maginot Line, then we increase the chances that the French lose that, and the Germans are going to get more production at the end of the turn. So maybe we hold on the Maginot Line at least through this next production, just so we deprive the Germans of that production. As I'm describing this, I hope you guys are appreciating the depth that the game has of the decision-making things that you have to keep in mind, like, oh, just abandon the Maginot Line. Well, then you give the Germans an extra factory. So don't abandon the Maginot Line too early. You probably want to do it at some point if it means, keeping France alive longer, but that's the thing, that's the risk management you're doing. Even as France, which is, probably destined to fall no matter what, you got to fight the edge cases, fight in the margins as much as possible, because the margins will pay off over time when the Allies come back into Europe and beat the Axis back. So, so far so good there. I don't think the French can really do any other movements. I guess they do have their sub. I guess I should have said, what kind of action are they taking? I only really moved one unit, so I could say, oh, I did a combined and move something else. But I don't think there's much I can do. I mean, at some point, I'm going to put the fleet out to sea. I'm not sure how soon it matters that I do that. I could try to blockade the Italians, but it's probably more important that I move that unit up, because doing one naval move, I mean, we can get some stuff put out to sea, but we don't want to put our carrier or our battleships, because that impacts the Vichy die roll, which we'll look at here probably before too long with the rate that the Axis is going in. So it's almost like, there's not much left for the French to do. They had to move that unit up because we want to make sure we can get extra units into Paris as it may be required. But yeah, I don't know. Our options are somewhat limited here. We can only do what we can do. And the important thing is, even when we get more French units on the board, it's the board position that matters. And so far, the Axis have gotten the board position they need. And if they keep advancing, where they're going, they're going to be able to be threatening Paris before too long. If we can get the BEF destroyed, that'd be great. But it's not a need. It's a nice to have if we can do it, and that would slow down the UK defending the home Isles. So, yeah, I think we're good there. We're fine. I think the French will do nothing else. So, we're simply going to move the impulse to the Axis, and we're going to roll weather. So what weather is now is really going to decide what happens through the rest of the turn. So rolling the die, I rolled an 8, and I knocked this poor guy. So what's an 8? Tell me it's fantastic weather again. It is. It definitely is fantastic weather. That's amazing. Man, that's wild stuff. Okay. But I guess the key difference is here that the marker is going to slide 2 boxes. So the end of the turn is coming. It's just going to be a matter of when now. So back to the Axis, I guess. And what is the Italian move going to be? Do we declare war yet? Do we try? What can we do if we do it? I think our problem is, as long as we're neutral, we can't really move a lot of our fleet. So we'll do a combined, and we'll send another of our subs out to the Cape St. Vincent sea zone, and just we're fine. We're doing great, and we'll rebase our bomber plane that we brought in closer to the front in Egypt. So as you can see, we moved the air from over here to over there, and that's it. And the Germans will get to go now. Germans might not take a land action, actually. It's going to depend on if we can actually attack anywhere in force. If we can, then we will, but I'm not sure that we can. Remember, we're kind of out of air. So is the French. The Commonwealth is not out of air, which kind of means we're not going to attack the Commonwealth. I mean, that's just the reality. Until we get our air sort of refreshed, there's not a whole lot of good in trying to attack the BEF. They can hold their position on the coast. They're fine. They're strong. But we could probably get away with attacking somewhere else, quite possibly, and taking another hex. And even though we don't have any air, if there is something out there worth trying with a blitz table and with a +1 bonus, then we might want to do that. But it all comes down to the combat factors. So like I said before, the French have 9 combat factors everywhere. So knowing we're not going to have any ground strikes, basically all I have to do is figure out, are there any attacks worth trying? If there isn't, then I might try to do a naval action and send some subs out to play. As I'm looking around, we are going to get some more subs next turn, not this turn. So it might not be worth it, but I could maybe send something out just to be annoying somewhere and make use of it. So I'm going to figure that out. Okay, with very careful, I decided to do a land action after all. I guess really, let's see, I moved 1, 2, 3 units. We would be saying Germany's doing it combined, and I've done 3 land movements. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 3 land movements. I'm going to get 3 attacks, but I'm really only going to do 1. And then I get 1 naval move. And I'm thinking through what I want to do with that 1 naval move. I think we're going to have the German subs come out to play. The only problem is only one of them's got decent range. That's the real problem. So this poor guy is going to stay at home. And we're going to send this sub. Can't really read it well. It's got a 5 movement allowance and a 6 range. Go 1, 2, 3, and it'll be in the 2 box of the North Atlantic. So I've cheated a little bit. I did my land movement before my naval movement, but I was trying to do the counter factor counting, and I just figured it was easier just to do the moves. And since they're a combined action, I'm good to go. It's fine. So just one of those funny things. Easier for me. If I were playing an opponent, I probably would not do it this way, right? But I'm playing myself, and I just wanted to see what the numbers came out to be in terms of the ground combats and everything else. And it is what I kind of want to try. But knowing that I could do a combined action, trying to think ahead here, I could do that. With the 1 naval move, send our 1 sub out, and we sent it all the way out to the North Atlantic. Way out here where there's not much cover. And during our combat, our naval combat, we're going to do a search. So what we're going to do is we're going to flip him to show that we're searching with him. And we're going to give it a roll. And the Commonwealth is also going to get a chance. But what we need to do is roll a 2 or less. And that's going to be hard to do, but we'll see what we get. I rolled a 7, and the Commonwealth player will also roll. And they actually roll a 2. And so, let's see. It's going to be 9 versus, 10. Alright, so I rolled a 7 for the Germans. The Commonwealth rolled a 2. And so the Commonwealth actually found the subs before the subs could do anything, apparently, the one escort unit out there. By rolling a 2, that's lower than a 3, which means units in the 3 box or higher are involved, and they can choose what they want to do. Now, having rolled high, for the Germans, that's really bad, because that governs how many surprise points the Commonwealth get. So the whole thing with naval combat, and this is turning out to be a naval combat example, is you add the position your ship is in plus your opponent's die roll. So the Commonwealth gets 3 for where that unit is. The what is this thing? The Curacoa. So 3 plus 7 is 10. 10 surprise points for the Commonwealth. The Axis has 2, because they're in the 2 box, plus 2 for the Commonwealth die roll is 4. So 10 minus 4 is 6. So basically the Commonwealth are going to get 6 surprise points to spend doing stuff. And let's see if we can check out the naval combat rules here, because this is where we're going to start getting into all of that. So we had a case of Commonwealth finding the enemy where let's see. Okay, if only your side has units included, you must pick at least one section containing committed enemy units. So the Germans would have had to commit their subs, but they did because they wanted to find convoys. And you do committing before searching. Okay, so then we can choose to exclude our zero-box convoys as the Commonwealth, so we'll do that. And now we'll figure out the combat type. And let's see, we don't want it to be sub-combat necessarily. So we're probably gonna have to spend surprise points. So the way that this works is you choose combat type. You may choose a combat type if you spend 4 surprise points, or if you don't, you can choose to make it a naval air combat if you have aircraft or undamaged carriers there, but that's not the case for either of us. If it is not a naval air combat, you may choose to make it a submarine combat if you have a sub included and your opponent has any convoy points. So that's going to be the thing. Would the Germans even want it to be sub-combat? Well, if I look here at sub and ASW, the sub is going to have 3 sub-factors which could abort a unit. And likewise for ASW, if I look and see, this is a light cruiser unit, I think. It's going to have 2, and at most it's going to be able to abort a unit. But if we did ship combat, it would be, oh gosh, probably worse. I will need to think on this for a second. So this is kind of an interesting situation. It's funny. So the Germans basically have the ability to make it a sub-combat if they want to. But here's the funny thing. If they did do, and I'm just flipping the unit so you can see it again. I'll twist them so you can see them a little bit better. Here's the thing. If we did sub-combat, we would have 3 sub-factors against 1 ship. We could abort the Commonwealth ship. And then the Commonwealth ship would have basically ASW factors, and I believe that's a light cruiser, which means it would have 2 value for ASW. So then it would be also on the 2 to 3 chart of the sub and ASW naval combat chart. So a chance of aborting either way. However, if the if the sub unit chose to, if the Germans chose it to be, let it become a service combat, then it would actually have an advantage on the cruiser because it has 3 combat factors anyway, while the light cruiser only has a 1 combat factor, attack factor, and quite possibly would not be able to inflict any result without bumping up its stuff. But there's still surprise points here, so this is kind of a weird conundrum. Like, what do you try to do? But I guess the Commonwealth could use could shift its odds, its column on the combat table. This is kind of a weird. I don't know what's better here. I really don't. So let's just do it this way. We'll say that the Commonwealth doesn't spend any surprise points to make it, to choose the combat type. That goes to the Germans, who then have to decide if they want it to be a sub-combat type or not. Or sub-combat or not. And they would say no, I guess, but then when it comes to actual combat, the Commonwealth is going to use 2 surprise points to shift the subs down a column, and then they're going to use the other to shift theirs up by 2. So basically, they're going to cause the subs to do nothing to them, and this is going to be hard to show. Let me zoom out so I can get the chart on screen here. So if it's a normal surface combat, right, the German subs would be on this column because they have three surface factors. The Commonwealth will spend 2 surprise points to shift them down to the 1 to 2. So now, against one enemy ship, they can't get any result. The remaining 4 surprise points of the Commonwealth then they're in this 1 to 2 column, shift 2. So 1, 2, and now they're in this column, and they can force a D result on the sub. So the sub could be damaged, but it has to roll to avoid it. So I'm going to roll the die. Unfortunately, they rolled just an 8, which is just enough to take a loss, I believe. Let me double check. Double check that. Yes, if you roll if you roll their armor class, basically their defense value, or less, so I rolled an 8 there, then they take the hit. So what is going to happen here is that the sub is damaged and is going to go into the repair pool, basically, and that's pretty much it. So, yeah, there we go. The Germans tried to do something, and they failed spectacularly by the subs getting found by the light cruisers in the area. So it was worth a shot, but now the Germans are going to have to figure out, do they want to spend the production to repair those subs? They probably will, but that was really unfortunate, and a very long example that's going to make this video even longer than I intended. So let's get down to the final brass tacks here of our attack. Where are we attacking? We're attacking this hex here that also happens to have a flipped fighter, so we might be able to overrun that. But it has the 9 combat factors here. We're attacking with the 14 plus 16 is 30, so 30 to 9, that's 3 to 1 odds. We're doing the blitz table, which is a +1, so a 3 to 1 on the blitz table with a +1 to the die roll. So rolling the die, and let's see, we got a 6. Or no, I'm sorry. Oh no, yeah, a 6. 5 plus 1 is 6. 3 to 1 is a retreat result. So all of these guys must retreat. And let's see, I guess we go back here since Paris is full. And now here's the conundrum. So we're going to end up having to flip all of these units. If we move forward, then they're going to be at risk. So if we said, okay, we're going to advance with these guys, or let's say we advance like so, then our problem is going to be this unit will be flipped. So then it could be 9, 8, 17 to 8, 2 to 1 odds on the assault table. I don't know. 5, 14, 2 to 1 odds. Whew. Yeah, I don't know. What do we do here? Do we advance? We're going to have to flip everybody. We're going to have to flip everybody either way, and we're not going to be able to reorg anybody. I think we've used up all of our HQs. I don't think there's any other HQs nearby that can flip. They've all been flipped. all of our HQs are flipped. So do we advance? We didn't cause any losses. We forced a retreat, which is fine, which is great. We're getting another hex closer to France, but we gotta flip. We gotta flip. We'll do it this way. We'll advance, we'll flip, and we'll flip. And the thinking here is, if these guys are attacked here, then at least they're mechanized and they'll force a penalty. And I think the best that the French can get here is probably 2-to-1 odds. So 2-to-1 odds on the assault table -1. Yeah, there's almost no roll that they can do that would be beneficial to the French. I mean, it would hurt them. So that's probably the right move, but it is dangerous. It is a dangerous position that these guys are in now, and it would not be that hard to hurt them from here. So okay, so land combat's over. There's no air rebases to do. I can't reorg anything else. So this is it. So we're gonna roll. If I roll a 1, the turn ends, which is actually, at this point, what the Germans would like at this point. The weather's been so great, they would actually not mind it. But I rolled a 2. Oh, man. So it goes 2 boxes to the Allies, who will end it on a 3. And now the Allies are going to have to figure out what they're going to do. But you know what I'm going to do here, guys, is I am going to stop this video here. I think this video is probably an hour and a half long. So there we go, guys. We're still in the March-April turn, and we're already at the gates of Paris. We have 1 hex on Paris. And if we can keep the French from doing anything too crazy, what we'll be able to do is start fresh probably in May-June, and very likely take Paris in the May-June turn. We're getting awfully close. The next axis of advance is going to be to pull these guys forward a little bit, maybe attack here, clear that hex, and then we'll have 2 hexes on Paris. That would be the ideal situation if we could force it. It would be even nicer to get, you know, a 3rd hex over here, but I think we could do it if we had 2-on-1. I think it's possible, especially once we get our air back. So it's going very well for the Axis. Case yellow is technically still underway. Case red to potentially begin here shortly. We'll keep calling it case yellow for now, since we still got so much stuff here up here in the north not addressed. So we'll look at that in the next video. It will be the Allied impulse. Allied impulse with, again, really great weather, though the box is shifting the marker's shifting 2 boxes, so the end of the turn will be coming somewhat shortly. Yeah, we'll see what happens. All right, thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate it. Catch you in the next one. Take care. Keep gaming.